This is a relay project.
Seriously?
Seriously starts now. Here's Supriya and Ryan.
Yo, it's Wednesday, November 16th, and you're listening to Seriously with Supriya and Ryan. I am Supriya Dwivedi in Toronto.
Ryan Jesperson here in Edmonton. How are you doing?
I'm okay. My kid has been sick now for a week. I caught something in between, but I would say I'm very much on the mend. My daughter is not. She was basically up last night every hour coughing, and she coughed so hard that she ends up throwing up. So there's just a lot of laundry going on at my house.
This is the story that people are telling across the country, not to diminish your experience, but this is the story right now. These take your pick, I guess, but these respiratory illnesses that I don't know what it's like in your neck of the woods. Where we are, school attendance is way down due to illness. And then, of course, children's hospitals are starting to wave red flags across the country.
Yeah, so attendance is also way down on this side of the country. And to your point about children's hospitals, like not only are they waving all sorts of alarm bells, flags, whatever you want to call it, I mean, we need to be honest about what the pediatric healthcare situation is right now, and it's in crisis. Like overcapacity. We're talking about, children's hospitals opening up second ICUs because of the fact of demand. And parents are at their wits' end. This is, of course, in addition to like the pain and fever med shortage for kids and the antibiotic shortage for kids. I saw a headline this morning that apparently the drug shortage isn't also just limited to like kid stuff or the antibiotics, that it's spreading to other critical care drugs as well. So just like not good across the board. We'll get into that a little bit more in detail. Like I know we have a lot of stuff to get out the gate. So yeah, I mean, I don't know how are you and your family doing? I mean, you've got a really little guy. Right
Yeah,
now.
we do. We've kind of dodged the bullet to this point. I feel like you want to knock on wood because you're out and about all the time, whether it's the grocery store or our 7-year-old, he's in grade 2, still going to school at this point, and everybody's just trying to make the right decisions. And I just feel like everybody's exhausted. And so maybe this week's episode of Seriously will be where our national audience can all gather together and commiserate, Supriya. But we'll have insights coming up in just a little bit on mask mandates and what political leaders are saying across the country. Can we talk about the elephant in the room just south of us, the announcement, the one that everybody was anticipating? The Donald Trump will indeed seek the presidency again in 2024. Joe Biden says he thinks he's going to as well, but he's going to take some time and think on it. We could have a redux of the last time, and I think a lot of people, probably millions or tens of millions of people this morning, eating their breakfast with their hearts in their throats. What do you think about Trump's official announcement Tuesday night?
I thought it was interesting the way it was covered. The tone in which his announcement was largely covered by the American media anyway was very different. A lot less oomph, a lot less excitement, focusing on the fact that apparently there were people that wanted to leave the room early and security wouldn't let them at the venue. A lot of focus as well on the fact that Ivanka was not there. And then she later put out a statement saying that, she's going to focus on her young family right now. So that's interesting to me. I think people tend to underestimate Trump at their peril, right? Like, I think he still has a ton of appeal. He still has like a huge.
I think he could still be. I think he could be president. I'm not underestimating him. Are you?
No, I'm not either. But I think
Yeah.
it's like, I don't know, like the National Review put out an article yesterday that was just like, no. And it's like, okay, I mean, you said that the first time around. Like,
Yeah.
let's see what you say as his polling numbers improve or he's got some momentum going. But I think because of I don't know however you want to qualify last week's midterms as being a repudiation of Trump. I've seen a lot of people kind of describe the midterms that way. Then I don't know. I think it's a mistake to be like, well, we're in the clear now, right?
Yeah.
Like it's never that way. It's never that easy.
No, it's not. So there's two things that stop a Trump return to the White House. One of them could be, the Democrats. I mean, the Biden administration performs well over the next couple of years, or at least the next year. And people see evidence that they believe that the party's on the right track, and either he can convince Americans. We talked about his age and whether or not that's a factor. Just a couple of episodes ago, he can convince the American people that he is still the right choice, or he concedes to a certain degree, and the Democrats nominate somebody that's younger, potentially, and compelling, and equally as capable. And on the Republican side, I guess, who? Ron DeSantis? I'm not saying that that's an improvement. I'm not saying that that's better for the American people or for the world around us. People can take the next months or years to hash that out, but I would suggest that he's probably the other perceived front runner on the Republican side, right?
Yeah, I think Mike Pence also made interesting comments to Hannity either late last week or early this week. He's doing his like book tour thing and, all but confirmed that he's got the presidency on his mind. So will be interesting to see how he is received. Of course, like hardcore MAGA folks kind of hate him and we're looking to hang him, quite frankly, on January 6th, right?
Yeah.
So will be interesting to see the kind of like love or press that he gets off of it. But, the last time the Republicans did this in 2016 or 2015, in the lead up to 2016, there were a lot of folks on that stage, right? So it'll be interesting to see if this is more of like an open sort of contest and you got a lot of people up there vying against Trump for this. So
yeah. Maybe Elon Musk.
Oh,
Hey, what do you think?
He can't run. It wasn't born in the States.
Oh yeah, that's right. Fair enough.
So there you go.
There you go. Yeah. Well, although I see Ted Cruz's name still popping up on lists. He wasn't born in the States. I don't quite understand that. I don't really get what's going on in that one. There must be some technicality there.
He's like our worst export. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's that, and then there is. Should we talk about Twitter for a second? I mean, it's something that's relevant to people. $44 billion, and a few weeks into his tenure as Twitter's owner, and Elon Musk appears to be, for a successful billionaire, really operating with no clue about how the business actually works, firing thousands of employees, including some who've been critical of him on social media. I don't know what they were expecting, quite frankly, but it's a bit of a mess. And as I saw somebody suggest on Twitter, somebody that I followed just the other day, they sign in every morning now just to see if it's all still there.
Yeah, it's been quite the wild ride, I guess, watching Elon Musk sort of implode Twitter slowly yet surely. The interesting thing about what's been happening that I find really sticks out to me is the fact that Twitter is pretty much in violation of this new European Union digital regime, right? You have the GDPR, which is basically their overhaul on privacy and data, and you've got the Digital Services Act, which mandate all of these things that must be done, including having basic protections for things like your data. And Twitter is not doing that right now. And they're very clearly in breach of this. So will be interesting to see the EU flex its muscle here and see how Twitter reacts. And, Elon tends to operate right now as though he's within the confines of America only, but that's not what Twitter is. It's a global, right, business, and they have to follow other laws, and he's not. So
the global town square, as they call it. I saw somebody imply in a reply to one of his comments or one of his tweets that this thing was going to burn to the ground. It was going to no longer be here. And I saw that Jack Dorsey, the founder of Twitter, replied from his account @Jack. He just said, what did he say? It's never going away, or it'll always be here, or something like
how?
that.
Like, how will it always be here? Like,
Nah, I don't know.
like,
Maybe Musk runs it into the ground and then Dorsey buys it back for pennies on the dollar and restores it to its former glory. I don't know.
Yeah.
Can you lose, like, with the way that it has ingrained itself into people's lives and into the way that people communicate? I mean, there is a fabulous irony, isn't there, that we are watching Twitter melt down on Twitter, that Twitter is doing its job. Twitter is demonstrating exactly when there were these horrific building collapses, these manufacturing buildings in Bangladesh, or when there was flooding in Japan or Pakistan, or when there were disasters, those enormous tower fires in England, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, but I think what really gets me about Twitter is the fact that it is a platform that, everything you said is true in the way that it allows for conversations. It allows for live coverage of these like mass events that are happening around the globe. And if you're in a country that, doesn't have, you only, let's say, have access to like 2G, like a 2G network, Twitter still works on that, right? Because it's text-based and you're just getting news. And it's like, so Twitter's implosion really does impact the rest of the world, right? Outside of our own sphere, quite drastically. And quite, and the implosion of Twitter is going to be quite the loss for a lot of countries and how they gather news. And if you're in a more authoritarian country, right, that's how you're able to dissent. And it's bad that Twitter is on the path that it is right now.
Yeah, I think what's happening in Iran right now, and the role that social media has played in getting some of those videos out and some of those messages out, it's been completely remarkable. Let me ask you real quick, what do you think is the proper play from the international community following this Russian, what is this, an accidental, are we taking Putin at his word on this one, Supriya, an accidental missile strike in Poland killing 2 people?
Yeah, so I mean, the latest news that I would have seen on this is the fact that Poland, as well as a few other countries, are now, saying that it's increasingly likely that it was Ukrainian air defense is what brought that Russian missile down that led to 2 people in Poland being killed. So I think cooler heads are currently, prevailing right now. But I mean, the bottom line here is that if not for Putin's illegal war, those 2 people in Poland would still be alive. I mean, not to mention countless Ukrainians, right? But it's yesterday, as the news was developing, there was a lot of talk. I mean, World War III was trending, right, on Twitter, and there was a lot of talk about what the NATO response would be. Poland, of course, being a NATO country, and how NATO would react. And it's unclear at this point, I think, what exactly the next steps are, but I'm at least comforted by the fact that there isn't immediate talks of, escalation.
Yeah, that seemed to be the theme around the world, quite frankly. Here's a headline that people may have missed. There's a lot going on right now, but TD Economics recently releasing a report about the job vacancy gap in Canada. The gist of it, basically, is that we're still seeing huge numbers of job vacancies across the country. And of course, Supriya, for that, for people, for the average person on the ground, what it means is upward wage pressure, right? Great news for some. I'll tell you who it's not great for, though. That's employers, especially nonprofits and associations.
Yeah, suboptimal at best, and definitely not really all that great. And because, when employers need to pay more to attract and retain that talent, they need to be able to offset that cost somehow. And I don't know, Ryan, would you believe me if I told you that one way to offset that cost is actually through a training program?
Makes sense.
That's where... Yeah, it does. Yeah. And that's where We Know Training comes in, because they can help you create amazing courses and monetize them to become a high performing revenue stream. In one case, they helped an association gain an extra $3 million in revenue growth while completely transforming their training program.
Yeah. This is a really big deal, right? Plus, they're not just an LMS or an e-commerce platform. They can do everything from instructional design to course distribution, learner support. So everything is handled for you, and they really invest in their partners' success. Let We Know Training partner with you to create a training program that's impactful within your industry, powerful, and profitable. You can learn more today at weknowtraining.ca.
The Lead.
The principal tool at hand, if we had to go there, would be a mask mandate. Clearly, for social gatherings, I'm asking today that we be very careful around our children 4 and under. A cold or a minor respiratory symptom, a sinus infection to you, could be RSV or influenza to our younger members of our community and cause significant respiratory distress in them. So that's the key message. It's hard to mandate those social environments. That's my job today, is to educate Ontarians that this is a change. This isn't COVID that's affecting our children, although it obviously can. It's RSV and influenza combined that are driving our children to have to be admitted to hospitals. And we do have the tools at our disposal that can help protect our children and help protect our families.
So, Ryan, that was Dr. Kieran Moore, the Chief Medical Officer of Health here for Ontario, making his announcement on masks, which was a strong recommendation to wear masks during this current pediatric healthcare crisis. And I mean, I don't even know where to start here, because I started the show detailing my pretty shitty, no good week. And I think I mentioned to you off air, but I feel kind of dumb even complaining about anything, given what other parents and other families are going through right now. Dealing with the hospital system, at least in Ontario right now, for kids is a fucking nightmare. And there's no other way to put that. It is a legit nightmare. You've got sick kids reducing surgeries in Toronto to preserve ICU capacity. You've got CHEO opening up that second ICU. You've got all sorts of other children's hospitals operating over capacity. We're talking 120, 140%. In Hamilton, they've run out of cribs and other key instruments that they need to treat the youngest of our kids. And I'm not really sure how we got here. I don't think it really necessarily matters. What's important is that we are here and that we do something about it. And I don't know that we are, other than just being like, oh, it's bad.
Is this, I don't think this is an abstract question. Do you think it helps the cause to point out that these illnesses aren't all COVID? Do you think that if the messaging to members of the public was simply that this is some cases of COVID, influenza, these respiratory infections, it's a whole bunch of things that's straining the system, and we know that masks help protect against transmission in all of these cases or in many of these cases? Do you think it might help? Do you think that the pushback on masks is related to the word COVID? It's like a trigger that when people feel exhausted or frustrated or fed up after coming up on 3 years, that they lack a certain impetus to participate or to do their part. Do you know what I'm saying?
I do know what you're saying.
If you pull the word COVID out of it, does it help the cause?
I mean, maybe. So you're right. And I think it is important to point out that right now, kids that are filling up hospitals, it's not because of COVID. It is because of influenza A, and it is because of RSV largely. And so I think more information is always better. I generally tend to err on that side of things. But if you're looking at polling data when it comes to the willingness to put a mask on, or especially in a mandatory setting, I mean, Nanos was in the field a couple of weeks ago, and it is important to note that it was in relation to COVID. It wasn't in relation to flu or RSV. And a majority support a return of mandatory face masks if they were asked to, and if it was warranted, if it was necessary. And it's across the board. In BC, they had the highest support at 72%. It was followed by 71% in Ontario, 71% at the Atlantic, and 62.9% in the prairies, right? So we're not talking this huge swath of people being like, fuck masks, so I don't want to wear them. I think most people are good people and will do as they are requested or told to do by their governments, public health agencies, whatever. I think part of the problem is that people aren't being given adequate or accurate information. And it's all well and good for you and I to be talking about this and for Dr. Moore to have his pressers and for whatever. But if you're not implementing a mandate, you're sending a signal to the public at large that it's not really that big of a problem and it's not really that big of a deal. And, I don't know. It's like, I get the frustration with masks. I do. I don't necessarily even I don't have like modeling data to fall back on because we don't do that anymore in Ontario. To suggest that if we were to implement a blunt tool like masks, then, in 3-4 weeks, whatever that time may be, we'd start to see a decrease in some of these pediatric cases. But are we really willing to do nothing as, parents with kids that have like bleeding lacerations are literally being turned away from the ER because they're like, well, there's nothing we can do for you. And like, we have a kid that is, needs resuscitation or needs a ventilator or is in much more dire care. Like, I just, I kind of threw out my back because my daughter was on my bed and it started snowing here and she ran to the window and lost her footing. And I sort of like dove to make sure that she wouldn't fall off the bed because in my head, I was like, well, if she falls off the bed and needs to go to the ER, we're really fucked. So I might as well just contort my body together. And like, I know any parent would do that, but it's just like, these are the things that are going through people's heads, like it's just not normal.
Here's more on what Dr. Moore had to say.
I honestly think a mask mandate would be the furthest we'd have to go. Ontarians have been brilliant at adhering to all of the recommendations over the last 1,000 days of the pandemic. This is new, and I really appreciate the opportunity to speak directly to Ontarians through you to communicate that increasing risk, that increasing pressure on our healthcare system, and it's important to know it's not across all age groups. It is the youngest that cannot mask or would obviously have difficulty in masking, and we need to protect them.
So you heard Dr. Moore there. Basically, he was in response to a question of like, when they'd implement a mask mandate, and he says like it's the furthest that they would go is implementing one. Okay, well, like when the fuck are we going to do that? We're already canceling surgeries. We're already at overcapacity. We're turning away kids at the ER. Parents are at their wits' end. Like, I think we deserve to know some metrics. Like, what are the benchmarks in which these decisions are being made? Because we're not getting any of that right now.
How much of this falls on parents, though? How much of this falls on members of the general public? Like, one of the tone that Alberta's Premier, Danielle Smith, is taking as well, I mean, to paraphrase, is basically like, if you want to wear a mask, wear a mask. If you think that we should be wearing masks, then everyone should wear masks. She made a promise in campaigning to be leader of the United Conservatives, to be Alberta's next premier, that she would not. Like she and politicians can waffle all the time and waver all the time, but she said she would not reintroduce a mask mandate in schools, no matter what. She was strong on that, and right now, despite the numbers and children's hospitals and absences in schools, she's standing firm with that. But what stops members of the public from putting on a mask? I'm not trying to be devil's advocate here. Like, if they just lifted speed limits everywhere, do you think everyone would go 150 on every street, or would people still drive safely? Like, I'm not calling for lawlessness. I'm not calling for the onus to always be on citizens, but there's nothing stopping people from masking up en masse, right?
Yeah, no, there is nothing stopping people. But if you don't think your mask wearing is imperative, why would you do it? Right? Like, I think that's more where people's reasoning lies, is like, yeah, all right, I'll wear a mask, but do I need to? No? Great. Then I'm not going to fucking wear one. Right? Like, I think that's just how most people tend to operate. And, to your point, like, does this fall on parents? Do parents even know how fucked the situation is? If you're not plugged into the news every day, right? I get that parents are likely aware of like school absences or whatever, but are parents being told by their primary care providers, for example, if they have very young children and they have an older child that is in the school system, that the child should be wearing a mask while they're in school? Are primary care providers informing parents that in the lead up to RSV and flu season that, babies should maybe be kept away from larger crowds or larger family gatherings or larger, events because of the way that these viruses are impacting kids and because of the, the high levels of circulation right now? Like, I don't know if parents are getting that information. I can say anecdotally within my own circle of friends who have very young children, like younger than 1 year old, they're not getting that information. And, they piece it together via like mom groups on Facebook, or a lot of my friends are, healthcare workers themselves. So they're aware of the situation. But I mean, people can only work with what they know. And if you're keeping people in the dark on purpose, then like, we're kind of all screwed.
Okay, so let me ask you this in closing, and this is like a 4-part question. This is, for the most part,
more of a comment than a question.
It's like the biggest nightmare when you're live hosting an event and you go to the audience Q&A. Totally. Someone steps up and sort of adjusts their posture and clears their throat. You go, oh boy, they've been waiting for this one for a while. This is largely falls in the lap of provincial governments, obviously based on administration of health and education. But of course, federal and municipal politics to a certain degree come into play, depending on where you are. Do you think the official opposition messaging, the conservative messaging on ending all mandates, do you think that's influencing people's decisions? And on the flip side, I'm curious to know if the mask mandate ship has sailed, so to speak, what about campaigns? You and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago right here on Seriously. What about campaigns to get people to be more interested or to actually take action on vaccinating kids for both COVID or getting their flu shot?
Yeah, so to answer the first part of your question, whether the conservative messaging at the federal level has impacted people's perception of masks and mandates more generally, I would say yes, but the conservatives didn't just get there on their own. They had a lot of help from provincial conservatives as well on this front. And, it's not just a conservative issue either. Like if you look at British Columbia, for example, NDP government, they are basically saying, wow, the situation isn't as shitty here as it is in Ontario yet. So we're not going to do anything, and no mask mandate right now. And, I feel like provincial premiers have sort of mismanaged the pandemic irrespective of partisan stripe, like the whole way through. And I think we're all, and by all, I mean like all of our leaders, are basically beholden to a vociferous minority of fuckfaces who were, protesting outside hospitals and held Ottawa hostage, or holding border crossings hostage over these mandates and ending any and all mandates. And now we're in a situation where, because of being beholden to that minority, kids are literally suffering, and some will die as a result.
Supriya, calling it how it is every Wednesday right here on Seriously. You can share this episode. If you're listening to it on your phone, just click share. It's that easy. It means the world to us when you subscribe. And, of course, when you rate our podcast, wherever you download it. And, of course, Supriya, folks can find us on YouTube as well.
Yeah, you can catch us on Instagram at SeriouslyPod, on Twitter at Supriya and Ryan, our website, seriouslypod.com. We always love your emails as well, talk@seriouslypod.com.
My friend, next week we are going off the grid. So I'll talk to you 2 Wednesdays from now, right here.
Looking forward to it.
Seriously is hosted by Supriya Dwivedi and Ryan Jesperson. Technical producer, John Hicks. Executive producer, Josh Dunford. Account coordinator, Lawrence Terlego. General manager, Katie Cook-Shivers. Human resources, Lena Shepard. Voiceover by me, Tangi. Seriously is a relay project. For more, check out seriouslypod.com.